Oke, saya bawa itu juga. Indah sekali itu. Oke. Makasih, Mas. Boleh. Ada air atau gimana?
Tidak ada air.
Kering.
Di lembab. Itu udah.
Waduh.
Tapi
Mica, macerate,
Yeah.
minimal. Heliokinder. No. Thank you, Jessika.
Jessika is joining us from the sky, from the ceiling. That's the funny thing. Oh, from.
Emma Ave
Can you
in
hear
LA.
us, Emma?
Jessica,
Yes,
Jessika,
I can hear you. A little
Emma can.
echo.
Okay.
That's the funny thing. I mean, wow. Emma and Jessika, wow. I'm so full of thoughts, and as I was just sitting there thinking, oh gosh, now I go and enter this extraordinary space and atmosphere you've created. I was thinking about this condition of the cave as a space where, as a kind of unknowable space, really, and how we have to form the dimensions of it by orienting ourselves through it. And I think, Emma, so we're going to have a conversation which really it has some coordinates, but we are going to meet them as we go, in a sense. So it's not unlike these conditions of the cave, this kind of unknowability in a way of where we, of how we enter and go from point to point. There is so much to discuss, and I don't want to unpick or probe at or take away the mystery as well of what you've presented to us, or demystify it. So we're going to have a conversation, and then there'll be time also for questions as well from the audience. And I'm sorry to say I have brought my phone up with me, like another prosthetic
Same.
thing, because I've got this on me and my phone. And some of our conversations have been about prosthetics, haven't they, and about the prosthetic ear that we are presented with up here. So I hope that you'll discuss that as well in our conversation. But first of all, Emma and Jessika, I wanted to ask you how you came together to make this, and how it moves from the space in the gallery, which I'm sure we've all experienced, to this space here, and how you bring your bodies back into the work now.
Jessika, shall I start?
Yes.
And you follow.
Please. Thanks, Emma.
This feels both so sort of like an AI future as well, or rather present, as well as
No.
the deep primordial past. Jessika and I think, have created different kinds of recording studios throughout our process of working together. Never did we record in the same room. And so I feel that there is something apt about the way that this has come together in its many moving parts, and that there is, in some strange way, perhaps extra intimacy generated by the remoteness of Jessika being in LA, and yet I think clearer of voice than either of us.
Yes, well,
with
definitely
mics.
clearer than me.
And I think when presented with this opportunity to activate the piece, which is both a sound installation, 5-channel sound installation, and separate but entirely interwoven scent climate called Exuviae, the thinking was that we would disassemble it and then resynthesize, remix it in real time, and open ourselves up to that precarity, to compass ourselves as if in some kind of cave.
Yeah.
And also to presence some of the visuals that I have accrued while making these commissioned pieces, but did not integrate into the presentation, aside from that one shell ear, which Jim has as a slide.
Would you like it up, Emma?
Sure.
If
Jim,
Jim
if we
can
can-
put the slide up. Of the ear.
But the diffuser has performed as itself,
Yeah.
and has served as a mouth within the gallery, so it feels right to...
And I was going to say
migrate
something,
it.
ask you both something about the diffuser, because, oh wow, now we're right in the middle of this amazing picture, but maybe I should come to the edges a bit. I don't know if I can. I'm just in the earlobe, excuse the view. But I was going to say, we all enter this space, and the diffuser is with us for a long time, and we're with it for a long time, and it's slow. You're asking us to be with something producing very, very slowly, which in a way is also asking us to consider this kind of slow production of the cave and the materiality of the cave. And of course, sitting with something so revealed in kind of increments by sound, so scent revealed by increments by sound. It kind of almost mirrors or echoes something of your method as well in going into the cave and working with the cave materials.
Yes, I will say, and also the concept of maceration or of skin contact, which has been important, and as well as a kind of discovery in terms of how scents or perfumes get made. But Jessika, I'll turn this over to you as well, because you also pilgrimaged to certain caves in Java and even integrated those field recordings into the first part of the sound post-scent.
Yes. Well, I was thinking about the sensuousness of this kind of correspondence that we've had,
Yes.
and how it's actually intensified the communication.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm hearing my own echo. But I am here with the the scent.
Literally, she means that.
Literally, you've
Literally.
got the scent on you.
Yes.
And when you talk about the sensuousness of the correspondence, just to make clear for everyone, and I think I've got it right, is that you've both been in touch with each other for a long time developing this project. And does that mean correspondence through emails, texts, phone calls, everything? And was this during the pandemic then, largely?
It was, actually, I would say spring, summer very intensely. So it was intensified by its compression, but there were so many findings that predated our entering into correspondence that we both shared with each other, as well as a first collaboration for a live radio performance on Montez Press Radio, dedicated to suckling sounds and interphysiologies of lactation, for which Jessika created the most wild recording called Baby Placenta Mother, that was, for me, a huge inspiration and sonic prompt for even thinking about the kind of sound world that we might create for this piece.
Because I love hearing about your correspondence, Jessika and Emma, because I also love hearing about the stories around this project. And I think what I'd love to do is to pull out some of those stories, because I think the audience find it also equally as wonderful, because there is so much detail in this, and there are narratives and fairy tales in it, and kind of adventures and misadventures and strange materials. And I met, the last speakers who were up here talked about their meeting story, and I met Emma really through her writing, and not really realizing that two articles that I absolutely loved, one on underwater sound and one on the sound of caves, which is probably the work that maybe people in the room know in relation to this exhibition on paleoacoustics. I didn't realise that both of these were written by the same person, Emma, and it made a kind of brilliant sense to realise that you had written these. And part of that kind of sense making between these two corresponding isn't just about sound, but it's also in your ability to kind of tell really brilliant stories through sound, through a kind of attention to acoustics, and actually the acoustics or the sound in relation to the bodies that are making them. And so I would love to ask you about this, first of all, because this, I wonder, it's the piece that also appears up in the gallery, and it's one of the first things you told me about when then we met in person. And could you just, without me kind of paraphrasing or going through what you told me, could you talk to us about this and how it relates to the work that we've seen?
Yes. This is a 3D model rendered from scarce imagery that exists of a prosthetic ear carved from a mollusk shell of the type Spondylus gyteropus that was unearthed by a farmer winemaker who prospected fields in the Cabas region in France in 1962. I had chanced upon this while I was working at Goldsmiths at the Center for Research Architecture, thinking with material histories of oral and aural culture, and was interested in shell prostheses, hearing trumpets, etc. Came across an image in a book by the Franco-American poet Gustave Saubin of this prosthesis, an image that had been projected before, but you see this very accurate-looking ear attached to a female skull, it turns out. So it was a Neolithic, or it is rather, a Neolithic female skull that was trepanned in a very extreme way, and adjacent to it was this prosthetic shell-carved ear carved at a human scale. Somehow this was probably the most remarkable and strange and sort of futuristic life form that I had ever chanced upon, and perhaps, you know, I still consider it to be so, that has engaged me for years, and that was one of our prompts for the sound piece. Because again, it opens up, you know, histories of differently abled and of other modes of audition entirely through bone conduction and the vibrotactile. The fact that shell would have had to be dived for, I think, is extremely sexy, and again connects us to aquatic ape hypotheses, aquatic antecedents in the womb, the fact that we start to hear through amniotic liquid, the first sense to develop. So that's opened worlds. And I did, in fact, initiate a quest to try to locate this sea shell, as Jessika and I call it, and all but did find actually, through a very intricate set of months of correspondence with very dusty sort of institutions. But in fact, it was the daughter of the man who unearthed it, who is a curator of underwater archaeology in the southwest France, who was connected with me and was almost certain that it is in her father's house. He's still living, so fingers crossed that it may yet emerge. But so this was one of the first images that I texted Jessika after mentioning this commission and wished to collaborate on it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how did it then reach Jessika?
Yeah.
But through text?
Yes.
So she receives it as this kind of tiny, almost thumbnail piece.
Yes.
Because I was going to ask you both about scale then, and especially in that performance where, you know, we are so drawn to the scale of the body, the scale of your body, in relation to these huge images. That this, you know, so this is the scale. This is the scale of the ear.
No longer, yes.
The
life
scale
size.
of the ear rendered gigantic.
Yes.
And I have many things I'd like to ask you about scale, and in relation to also scales of the ocean, and of course we were talking about submersion with the last talk, and how I said, I always think of submersion as underwater, but of course the cave also offers us that condition as well.
And in fact, just quickly, Leslie Van Gelder, an archaeologist of finger flutings, especially in Gargas Cave, which tend to be made by children, said during a Zoom that we, quote, are underwater when in a cave, which I thought was a beautiful way of framing it. That you see, say, shells even in certain rocks.
I have lots of thoughts of that in terms of the atmospherics, and also in terms of like scent and sound and their propagation and how they move, and then, you know, your spraying of the liquid into the light, and where it kind of makes visible how the kind of elementally invisible moves. But I just wondered if you, and sorry, I just scratched the microphone with my hand. I wondered if you and Jessika wanted to talk to these questions of scale that come up in your work upstairs, but also down here.
Jessika, do you have thoughts? Or about the ear?
We had it was a very long process. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It was a long process of accumulating many recordings, and then that was edited into a piece which is in the space there. So I played back some of the original tracks which were included in that, as well as other things that were left out. So it had its kind of reverse narrative too.
How wonderful! So
And a rescaling, certainly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. The dimensions are certainly variable, as they say. But yes.
But also, of course, when you have a microphone
Yes.
doing some of that work. I mean, I was watching the. I don't know if other people. I'd be so interested to hear about other people's experiences as well of that time we spent with the diffuser, because that was time, and we were given that to kind of encounter something in our own way, I guess, and picking out what details we would. But when the diffuser was coming out, I kept thinking of how that was going straight up into the microphone, and with that kind of mess with the mechanics of the microphone, and then kind of hence mess with the scale of what we hear. And I wondered if the amplification each time was being turned up to kind of make some feedback or reverberation.
It was, yeah, that was a very additive layer. Because I and Jessika and I spoke about this. We were interested in pushing how both sound and scent molecules could be made to interarticulate each other within the installation via, vibration, subwoofer, etc. Or Jessica's voice, recorded voice, helping propagate scent molecules. Difficult to make happen for this iteration, but I think is also there as a conceptual layer, and so this too, I think, plays at that.
Oh yeah, I mean
there were some. Oh, sorry.
No, go, Jessika, please.
There was some part of the process where I was recording, diffusing water with my mouth over the microphones, but covering the microphones with leaves, ear-shaped leaves. Oh. So you could hear the droplets, but there was this kind of danger of destroying the microphone. But the leaf being this protective surface felt more part of this prosthetic ear, microphone as prosthetic ear.
Yes.
I don't know if you could hear those spinning sounds, but...
Yes.
The register of wet sounds runs through the piece. And
exactly.
Jessika, yeah. It begins, or not. I think in practice it doesn't really. It doesn't feel that there is a beginning per se, but with clicking sounds that Jessika makes that sounded to me a little like a buoy on a water surface.
Yeah.
There's a sense of.
Yeah, it's wonderful that in the audio as well. This kind of mix of, I think I might have said this to you, Emma, but this mix of feeling so acoustically led by tread. So I kept thinking of tread when I was listening to it, and so it's amazing that so much has come up about footprints in the caves and kind of imprints been made in the caves of how we navigate or walk through. But the walking through, and then also the sounds of the atmosphere, of the watery atmosphere in the cave.
Right.
Together.
We kind of coalesced around this story of moonmilk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which drew something very beautiful from the suckling sounds conversation.
Yes. It's both. So moonmilk was a discovery along the way, and it sounds mythical, but is a microbial secretion found in caves across the world. It grows over cave membranes, and I think in certain situations has helped conserve inscriptions.
And it's one of the ingredients in the perfume.
Yes.
And I'd love for you to talk about the ingredients in the perfume.
Yes.
Because just before we came back out here, you sprayed a bit on me. And while I was delighted, because I love the smell, and I want to hear what other people feel about the smell. It's so subjective, isn't it? Smell and sound. Like, I love it and all. Yeah, you sprayed a bit on me, and I was delighted, and then thought, oh, but it's kind of alive. And there was something that was almost kind of thrilling, but kind of also a bit repulsive about thinking of this living secretion on me. Yes. And so could you talk a bit about the makeup of the perfume?
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to call a scientist or ask a scientist in the audience perhaps whether it is indeed, say, technically still living, because moonmilk, being microbial, was the sort of base substance that the perfumer Barnabé Filion and I macerated and let it evolve.
Right.
And then joined that with a whole handful of other macerations that had been gifted by a microbiologist in the States from virgin Alaskan rainforest caves and others in the Southwest to just experimentally macerate, which means it's not a distillation, it's an infusion technically. It's like a skin contact wine. You just sink perfumer's alcohol into a substance. I also brought malted cicada bodies that I had collected off of pine trees.
Clay?
Intact, and used clay, a distillate of wet clay, distilled in an alembic made of wet clay by a niche Indian supplier that Barnabé knew of. That was a note that we decided we would use before I had discovered moonmilk. Interestingly, they are entirely in conversation in terms of the note registers that they generate. Moonmilk, again, Jim, I don't know if we can revert to any of the images of moonmilk in vacuum-sealed bags by a female fishmonger in Zurich. This is thanks to some Swiss friends who were able to expedition to a cave called Mount Pilatus and take some samples. But it looks a little like wet concrete or plaster or ricotta, but smells
Kind of really
green.
grey ricotta.
Yes.
Kind of not ricotta you'd want to eat.
Yes. But there's something of, say, the underside of a mushroom gill and a mineral mossiness. And a musk. That was the surprise.
Yeah, you can really smell that in it. I mean, when you describe all of these ingredients, and there are so many, and you talk about the stories of who went to find them or get them for you, this is the skull, by the way, that Emma mentioned with the prosthetic ear shell on the side, which is extraordinary, isn't it? Here. But back to the ingredients, because in this way, you pull these scents or these materials from so many different caves and create this almost this kind of illusion of a singular cave, capital C, like this is the smell of a cave. And I wondered if you could say something, Emma and Jessika, about this relationship between kind of the real cave, which I think came up in the last talk, like this idea of the real space, and the fantasy or the illusion or these kind of aspects of it, which a scent kind of is, like a note in a scent is a kind of illusory detail in a way. And how you were figuring then this relationship between these real materials you'd gathered and I guess this kind of extraordinary, fantastical, imaginative scent.
Jessika, do you want to start? Or I can.
You go ahead,
Okay.
Emma.
I was keen to try to secure some actual substances to sort of play guides as we developed the scent, but was never fixated on wanting or to make it site-specific. Instead, that it would sort of serve as an extrapolation and sensory thought form that helps channel particularly the softness, the moistness, the humidity found within caves, the soft architectures that many of them are, and which have, I think, as an accident or incident of climate, helped conserve some of the inscriptions. This is moonmilk, by the way.
Here.
Yes.
So you see ricotta you wouldn't want to eat.
So there were 3 different bags of moonmilk found in different sections of a cave. Each of them, I would say, noticeably different.
Did they all go into the scent? Every bag?
We macerated them in separate jars, let them evolve, and then in the first edition of the scent, yes, added some of this actual maceration to our synthetic base. And in the second edition, added a little less, only because the quantity is so finite. I think also, you know, that being an important aspect.
Because when I came to see the show here, amazingly, coincidentally, Emma was also here changing the canister that was up in the gallery. And Emma said, "Smell this." And it was the end of the last batch of perfume that had also collected as a residue on the bottom of the bottle and had, well, like wine, I guess, kind of matured into another kind of scent profile. And I guess this is also part of the extraordinary nature of the work, is that it's always changing, and it's slow change. It's this kind of slow evolution of scent that you might not even perceive, because you might not be here again, or you might not have, or you might just not notice. You might not know how to smell. I wouldn't necessarily know how to smell that differently unless you'd guided me. So this brings me to something as well about the cave that I guess came up before, that I asked a question about in terms of kind of access or accessibility and kind of how one knows or how one learns. And I'm interested in a sense who guided you through these spaces, or introduced you to them, or helped you kind of have access to them. Who I know that Barnaby, the perfume expert, has also helped you in terms of scent profiles, but this also seems like an amazing journey of learning for you, like study of cave scents.
Wait, Jessika, you should describe your Indonesian experience after
Yes.
this.
Yes, and I actually had a few thoughts about the connection between the imagined or the visualized vibration as it connects to the microbial life. So it's something we know we have a connection with, something that's microscopic, and that it lives in our body, and it might be the same as something existing in the moonmilk. So this way of hearing a space, whether that's a human body or a cave, can evoke that connection, which is fundamentally reality, but we have to visualize it to have the experience, whether we're in the cave or just feeling the texture of our own mouth and the sounds that we make. And you know, it's very innate. We go into a space and we want to make a sound to hear how it resonates, and all of these microbes are responding to those sounds, and inside our bodies as well.
Yes.
So
And-
when
oh,
I
go
did
on.
go ahead.
No, you go on.
Oh, I was going to say something about Goa Putri, which is the cave that I was fortunate to visit this summer. I was invited to Indonesia by Melati Suryodarmo, an incredible Indonesian performance artist who was directing this enormous festival at the Borobudur temple in central Java. And around the time of doing rehearsals for this ceremony, there were 180 people involved in this ceremony. It was called Ruatan Bumi, or Ceremony of the Earth. And around that time, I went to visit this particular cave on the southern coast. Goa Putri. Goa is cave, and Putri is young girl or princess. And it was just beautiful. You can actually hear us in the recording that I played back saying in Indonesian, "Oh, it's so beautiful." The opening of the cave was divided into two areas. One which was like a membrane of rock, and you couldn't, it was actually like a tiny cave. And the other side was like an entry. and went very, very deep. And there were swallows nesting above the opening, and many, many bats inside. And the stalactites and stalagmites were just glistening and, yeah, very fine. There was something very feminine and bright about it, but also, like you were saying, Ella, just that feeling of mystery that you don't want to intrude upon or somehow just do the wrong thing. Everyone was, I enjoyed through this process with Emma the also feeling of tentativeness around so many sacred substances, and to think whether it's alive or not.
Right.
And to just always answer, yes, it is alive.
Yes.
And that being part of the beauty of sound and using our abilities to understand sound to recognize the life in all beings, material beings. So we had a great visit to that cave, and I was really grateful to get that prompt from this process with Emma.
Oh, so Jessica was sending me images from this cave as you know, the edits were happening, and I was macerating cicada malted bodies, and you know, it did look like there was moonmilk in that cave.
I love that editing and macerating
Yes.
become like, I don't know,
Yes.
parallel.
I would say they could be interchangeable as words, but it occurred to me that I think in some ways the scent and the sound are analogues, loosely, analogues of each other, because they're the sort of same or a similar constellation of reference and dialogues were lived.
I was going to say something about them as as analogues of each other. I'm also aware of time and also making space for other people's questions. Yeah, I mean, there are so many. And Jessika, it's actually really tantalizing you being just a voice, because I also realize I don't know where to look when you're speaking, which is something that I'm finding kind of increasingly more interesting as this conversation goes on. So I'm sure there are lots of questions.
It's very fun for me too.
Can you see us, by the way?
I can.
You can. You can. If I wave, can you see me waving?
You're about an inch tall, but yes.
That's great in terms of scale, isn't it?
And the ears.
Yeah, so the ears are huge,
mega.
the bodies are small. So thoughts, comments, questions, anything, and asking, you know, even the simplest questions about how this was made. This is a hugely detailed project. So does anyone have a question for Emma and Jessika?
Thanks very much. I don't know if this is on. Emma, I'm curious about the movements and your movement on the stage area. I don't know if you could talk just maybe a little bit about them without spoiling the mystery too much, and also kind of what Jessica's understanding or relationship to them was, and I'm not sure if Jessica's seen them or experienced them, and how that relationship worked.
No, I think productively that there are these productive limitations to this scenario, that Jessika does see something but doesn't see all, and similar as so for me. The movements were largely improvised, but attempted to channel some of the feelings or postures even of being, say, in a new cave opening or former mine, when you maybe have a headlamp, but it becomes a deeply somatic experience of not knowing the way forward. And then ended up playing with a handful of props, so including headlamp, mica flakes that remained, that had not been macerated. I think of caves as being sites of special effects always, and mica is an amazing substance in that way, like a proto-mirror. So anyway, if there was ever a shimmer or something like glitter that was perceptible to you, that was the thought. And then a water sort of mister, that I at one point sprayed across the wall, only because, as a way to just presence moisture and water in this rather dry environment. Also, I would say it's hard to have to contend with the frontality of a projection such as this, because it enforces frontality, and I think that isn't my preferred modality, but it was exhilarating to be able to presence and dialogue with a handful of images or photographs that I had made during field work, which I like, especially the ones which are almost entirely dark, of say a lit limb, an arm, a slug trail, a slug track, which was a leitmotif for Jessika and my work together. I think, again, less information is more in a cave, so.
And Jessika.
Oh yes, Jessika, gosh.
Does Jessika want to, did Jessika have to go?
Jessika?
To an
I'm fine.
No.
Oh.
Okay, so tell us what you did sonically.
Today,
Yes.
I played back the recording of the Princess Cave for the whole second section. And I think you could hear Dolly Nofer's overtone flute. He was playing in the Princess Cave, and you could hear some of the cave droplets. But really, that cave is very, very tactile. There is no echo. And then Emma and I were vocalizing together throughout that time, that 10-minute section. And then the third section was a remix of the installation, including our live voices. And I also added some references. You might have heard a dog who was responding to the installation recording. He was in the studio when it was being mixed, and he really loved the sounds, and so he was vocalizing. Not really a growl or a howl or a bark. I don't know what to call this type of sound.
Oh, that sound, that kind of
It was so
that
bass.
sound. Yeah, it was
kind of
an
like
amazing sound.
It was
Oh, right, what's the kind of deeper kind of... That wasn't... It was brilliant. Brilliant that you made that sound. So was that... I mean, the question also, was that... Did that answer your question also? Because I think part of the question was about how the experience was for you dialoguing and duetting with Emma here remotely, Jessika.
Yes, it's so exciting for me to witness Emma's physical presence.
Yeah.
I mean, we have gotten to meet in Paris.
Yes.
Is that the only time?
Paris and New York.
And New York too.
Yes.
So
See, it's a
It
very
was very
romantic
exciting.
story, this. London, Paris, New York, always at a distance, a beautiful scent involved.
So I did send the scent to Jessika 2 samples. She had not smelt it until a week ago,
Wow.
but saved the second edition sample till today.
Oh, amazing. So today really, so it's gone, all the scent has gone in Jessica's house. Thank you so much for that question. It's great to hear about your relationship at a distance and how it's like we could come back at another point like a soap opera, see how it evolves. Is there another question or thought or comment about this work? I always do this. I don't even put on my glasses, but people at the side can see.
It can be paraverbal.
Yeah, exactly. It could be infrasonic. Because I actually, if no one else does, I do have a question about kind of infrasonic and out of range frequencies in this work. And actually the dog could kind of bring us to this point. Because I was thinking of the dog in the recording studio, and actually a set of ears there that might be able to pick up on frequencies that we cannot, and maybe in some ways a kind of speaking or vocalizing through listening that we ourselves cannot do if we can't hear certain pitches or, in the cave. And because this work that we've witnessed today and that's in the gallery speaks to so much about also what's beyond our comprehension or what we cannot necessarily perceive with our human senses, I wondered if you could talk to how that figures in the work for you explicitly, or how it figured in the making of it.
I think, so as with the shell ear, which may well have been some sort of hearing aid, transducer of, say, extrasensory or infra or sub or suprasonic frequencies, there's something of the shamanistic in it. I'm certainly guided by Elizabeth Grosch's notion of cosmological imponderables, and like the ambiguities, say, within sound that are audible within the piece, but help presence an auratic layer that's maybe a little less available. So there's a moment where I am sort of pushing my trainers through cave mud, which sounds quite metallic, and sort of takes us down into a slightly more vibrotactile ground. There is water through Jessica's soundings, in moments as if we are inside of a mouth, but water, we as humans are not equipped to hear without, or hear as we do above air, in air, underwater. And I think that's always, that's been a rich place to work from as well, and is humbling, that we need some sort of mediatic device to help transduce the underwater, but we can fathom it, and Jessika does so through her voice.
And I think that kind of extends then, doesn't it, into an imaginative practice. That if we don't have access necessarily explicitly through hearing, we can go there through our kind of feeling, through our emotive feeling in a space, and through imagination and affect. If no one else has a direct comment right now, I have a question for someone in the audience. Is that okay? Is that allowed? So after the talk this morning, it's for Laura about the object that comes out of the cave. I should put my glasses on. Is Laura there? Hi. Because as you were talking this morning, I was thinking in anticipation of this talk and really thinking about this prosthetic ear, and about the about Littlefoot, and about the pictures you had access. You said if you Google Littlefoot, you'll get these pictures of the icon of the piece outside of its reality, outside of its context. And I thought, this is going to be really interesting when we see the prosthetic ear kind of taken out of, its space of finding, or its space of living in a sense of where it might have been employed or used as a device. And I was thinking through this and thinking, okay, so part of taking the object out of the space is also to access something or to isolate it in a sense, to think about its affect or its kind of aura, I guess in a sense, on its own, but not devoid of context, kind of bringing back the context, but it's another kind of relationship from seeing it in space. And I just kind of wanted to open that. It's less a question as a kind of discussion point, because it's not a resolved thought, but thinking about almost where it comes out of its context and becomes almost curated into blank space or black space. Sorry, Laura, I realise I've offered you just a lot of thoughts and nothing very direct there.
Can you hear me?
Actually, yes, it is quite interesting.
Can you hear me?
Maybe there's a direct... Can we hear you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting for me. And this is, I've just been sort of trying to formulate a question in my mind about it, but I haven't been able to, so thanks.
It's all right.
And so wonderfully fascinating. And I'm curious to ask you, you know, how, because I think there's something in this thing about, you know, you go there or you find something in a context.
Oh.
In a context, and you
Glitch. Change the mic. Yeah, that's what I was attempting to do for you earlier.
Okay, let's try this one. Yeah. So the thing is that what I'm trying to think around is that, you know, in a way, what both of us are doing is then recontextualizing the object in
Yeah.
a different set of relations, in a different imaginary process,
Yes.
where it is still attached to reality. Yes. But you are, because you can't just, you're not trying to just repeat that reality or put that thing back into a reality or illustrate that reality. Yeah. You're trying to make a new reality with it and to give the experience of it within a very kind of, and that's where that relationship between the imaginative and the real for me is so fascinating, and which I'm just loving in this.
Yeah.
You know, and this incredible powerfulness of your performance and the tremendous feeling, the experiential nature of it. You know, where you really are creating an experience, an immersive experience for us, which I'm just blown away by. You know? And I'm just thinking through exactly what you've articulated there. You know, the original experience of something in reality, and then how that reality. You know, where does art come in that?
Yes,
you
exactly.
know?
Yeah.
And I think something that I keep thinking of, because I keep thinking of the Blombos stone, that image of the stone with the first inscription that we have.
Yeah.
And it's on ochre, and I really sort of believe that it is an object which contains all of these possibilities that I felt were so profoundly materialized and in your work, you know, that it's on ochre. It would definitely have been related to ritual. It would certainly have been part of performance. You know, there are all of those things in that object, which somehow then became performed in a way for me. That's what kept going through my head in what you were doing. It was like a bit like that object brought to life. So, yeah.
Thank you, because that I nearly projected a similar image of that very piece, because it was important to me, as also during the process of macerating scent, ochre, pigment. But I think the question, this urge to inscribe, is always there, but I think continues to be a cosmological imponderable, but I think also it's I love thinking, or thinking with inscription in all forms and across media. So To speak is to inscribe. The fact that certain cave paintings were made with mouth-blown pigments, to me, makes them kinds of voice prints, in fact. And that
Wonderful.
makes them microbial, therefore.
Your diffusion in the beginning,
Yeah.
and the role of breath,
Yeah.
within the cave.
Yes, yes, because
wonderful.
caves themselves are diffusers. They are so porous. That's why a headlamp is great, because it is a way, I think, presencing headlamp is a way to sort of register the porosity of cave. You can photograph sort of via flash these wet particles as they fall and vaporize.
Yeah. But using the flashlight, of course, both the lights and the microphone, brings back to this point in your question that's I think, so pointedly brilliant in terms of what the whole context of this event, which is what role then does art play, or what role does amplification or framing play in, I guess, understanding or kind of seeking to understand or imagining, going back into very, very, very deep pasts, as you brought up in your talk, Laura, and also comes into your work very strongly, Emma and Jessika, in order to also imagine futures. And I loved the point about kids going in and graffitiing on caves, and like, why is that less valuable? Like, one day that will be as old, or the value we place in old things. So I guess it opens up lots of questions as well about how you framed your work upstairs, how you chose for these elements to be installed together, I'm guessing in discussion with the event curator, the exhibition curators, and then how then it gets reconfigured for also a live audience, for an audience who you are there with in the same time and space, sharing the same air, the same breath, recycling in this space. We're in our own cave, so to speak. That's a kind of a comment that we could respond to and elaborate on for the last few minutes, or if anyone else has a comment or thought to offer to Emma and Jessika. I am really still very interested in people's experience of the long beginning and the diffuser.
One thought, actually, as
Yeah.
you mentioned that, as Catherine Yusoff yesterday described the poesis of temporality that takes place within or while visiting caves, that time changes or time dissolves. Time is not is present but is not counted in caves. I had a version of that experience while hidden behind in the wings, knowing that and hearing the diffuser diffusing, feeling, I think, a collection of, or growing collection of bodies, but not knowing when Jessika would indeed come in and initiate the sounding section. And so there was a feeling of
was that the
of cave
score
time.
then? I still don't want to like deconstruct the whole thing, but that was the score that Jessika had to go first.
Diffuser, and then Jessika came in, so she was my compass for then joining in a vocal riff, but from the wings. Because I didn't want to be sort of performing body, present body, for the majority of it. I think that sound is body too. And
I feel like, and this is just my thought, I feel like it's a real gift, in a sense, to be given time just to consider maybe one thing or two things together and just be with that and be kind of present with that moment. And in a sense, there's now, I mean, it seems so obvious saying it, I've even brought my phone to the stage because it has notes on from our discussions. But it seems so obvious to say that we're in this like very kind of accelerated environment of attention going there and there and there and there, and it's rapid and it's rapid. And to just give our attention to focused to one kind of relationship, which is this relationship of the microphone and diffuser, this relationship of sense sound, was a really amazing experience for me right at the beginning.
I'm glad that it generated some sort of threshold
Yeah.
moment, time to adjust, because I think that's the gift that any cave gives us and asks of us.
Yeah, I do too. Any other thought? The reason I keep going to the audience is because I'm like, God, I feel like I've asked Emma's. I could keep asking, but I don't want it just to be me asking if other people have things they want to comment on and respond to. Because we have 3 minutes, so it's like an auction. It's your last chance to ask a question. And if we don't, then I would like to offer this to you, Emma, because this I found last night, and it speaks to this condition of submersion that we were talking about, and how the cave, in a sense, meets the deep ocean, meets some of the cosmic environment. Because I do take, when Laura said, that it's infinite, it's limitless, but in the cave, you find your stop. I was like, yeah, I'm going to rephrase what I was thinking about the cave, and actually place it more perhaps in a sense as a kind of analogous black hole. Like there are limits to these spaces, these unknowable spaces. And in our talking about the deep ocean in the cave, I found this piece that was about these 2 marine biologists, Roger Payne and Scott McVeigh, who in 1967 were listening to whale song, whale voice, and we're finding that there were variations that were actually as complex as bird song. And I just loved this description here, that listening through hydrophones at night to the swells offshore of Bermuda and the whales below, Payne likened the experience to, quote, walking in a dark cave, dropping your flashlight and hearing wave after wave of echoes cascading back from the darkness beyond. The cave has spoken to you. That's what whales do. They give the ocean its voice. And I was thinking of that because I was thinking of the body in these unknowable spaces or in these mysterious spaces. And I was thinking of what you and Jessika were doing. And I'd like to offer that as a kind of final thought about giving the cave its voice, or one of its voices, today. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's been amazing to watch that performance and hear you talk about this work.
Thank you, and thank you, Jessika. You are with us.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.